We're now recording. Thanks everybody for being here for the September edition of the Agones community meeting. Mark wants to talk about alpha and beta reviews and probably a few other things, but he's still working out his agenda.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that wants to share anything they're working on? Or if you're
anyone new?
I got trolled today for a good couple of hours with a disconnect issue. So calling player tracking on disconnect, that all worked fine. But I also want to call shutdown when my last player leaves the map. But in Unreal, there's this really useful thing where as you're disconnecting, you're still connected. So the count never gets to 0 on my logout. So yeah, that trolled me for a good hour or two today.
Oh, so you have to wait and watch to make sure that it goes to 0, and then once you're 0, then you shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
But on logout, it's always 1 because there's always at least one person logging out.
Where? Oh, Dom, where's your ticket about doing that API surface stuff for player tracking?
The resource base. If you scroll down, it's in the previous month's one.
That could work too. Oh, we have some new people. Here we go. My brain's not working yet today.
Is it rude if I don't introduce myself when you ask for new people?
No, we're just going to add you to the list. No.
Well, Eddie, now that you're here, you can introduce yourself.
Howdy, yep. Eddie Knight. I've been interfacing with Daniel. We're working on a fairly ambitious project. Neither of us are game developers though, so it's been a wild ride for the past couple of months. This is my first time sitting in on one of these meetings though. Just gonna kind of be a fly on the wall.
Well, thanks for joining. It's great to see someone that has a microphone to rival Mark. So
it's important.
Oh, you don't want my basic audio. It's atrocious.
Okay. Actually, why is my brain's not working? Okay, if you're okay, I think I've reached. My brain is really not working this morning. Okay, I've reached the things that I wanted to write down. I'm sure I'll come up with other stuff. Okay, so like we said in our last meeting, we were gonna do alpha and beta reviews at the beginning of each community meeting. So I chucked that in there. So going down the list for funsies. At the top, multi-cluster allocation. Pune, how do you feel about multi-cluster allocation these days? Is Pune listening? Pune is not listening. That's hilarious. I don't think we have a ticket for making that stable.
I saw there's a bug fix going in for the timeout issues around it that went in today.
Yep. All right, move on down the list. And we can always come back. The example gate's not a thing. Port allocation to multiple containers. We actually have a ticket that's 28 days old to say, let's move that to stable. It seems like no one has disagreed with that. So I'm just going to put a little help wanted on that because that would be nice. Sounds like I think this has been sitting for 28 days. Nobody has disagreed. So cool. I think that unless anyone disagrees with that, I think that ticket's been sitting there for long enough. Player tracking. Actually, Robbie pinged me today. We can actually let's leave that for the player tracking section. I want to leave that for that, so I'll skip over that one for fun. SDK send game server watch on execution. that's been running since 1.70. So basically that one, if people don't remember, that's where we wrote the feature flag so that as soon as you hit watch, you would get a message straight away saying, here's the game server. It's been in alpha since 1.7.0. We're just about to drop 1.90. Should we put a ticket in place to move that to beta? Dumb's nodding.
I mean, personally, haven't used it because Watch isn't supported in my SDK, but it sounds like a sensible thing to do.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone's complaining. All right. I think the thing is, do we create a ticket? And then if no one complains about the ticket. All right. Let's create ticket to move this to beta. Sweet. Oh, we're sitting here. Cool. All right. Anything else anyone other than player tracking? I want to dig deeper into player tracking a bit specifically, but anything else on, I don't think there's anything else that about moving alpha or beta stuff up their progression paths. I know we have some new flagged items coming into develop in the next release, but that probably doesn't need to be talked about here, I don't think.
I'm just wondering about that, the send game server on Watch. Maybe might have to update some tests on Node.js. I mean, don't have to, but
Gotcha.
we can now test for that as well. We might want to test in other SDKs as well.
Got it. I think we have, I want to say, I think we have feature flag stuff in those SDKs to check to see if it does the thing that we expect it to, but I can't remember. I have to have a look. All right. All right, I'll create a ticket. If no one complains, then we can move that forward. Sweet. Player tracking, which is probably the next big feature that we're all working on. Robbie pinged me today and asked me a good question. Should we move the current SDK to beta? I know we've got some stuff in there around changing how some of the underlying API surface works. But I guess the question I have is, yes, we should do that, but does the current SDK surface do what people need, or do people need other things, or like, are they finding any problems with it? It's probably like.
So for me, like, works great. I use it all the time. Really intuitive, especially grabbing the user IDs is really, really nice and useful, especially during testing. The main thing that's missing is kind of my point later on about metrics and custom metrics.
Right.
So I think the functionality of player tracking is great and could go into beta.
Yep.
So yeah, for me, I think it does exactly what we need it to do.
All right. Sounds like, yeah, we should, if you want to pull player tracking metrics, do you want to start a ticket around player tracking metrics?
Yes. We discussed this last time, but I can't remember where we left it. Where is design doc, right? We should do a design doc on it.
Yeah, we should just write out exactly what we want. Yeah. It sounds like you have strong feelings about what metrics should be exposed.
I have strong feelings about a lot of stuff.
This is how everyone gets things. Like, I have opinions. Now this belongs to you. Yes, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right. So at some point, all right. So I guess create a ticket. Moving to beta. I feel like adopting the resource-based APIs should probably be a prerequisite before moving to beta. I don't know how, like, other people, like, if we're going to do that, we should do that before we move to beta rather than after.
I agree, but wasn't pushing it because I don't particularly have the time myself.
Yeah, it's a bit of busy work, unfortunately. But I think that's legit and sets us up for success going forward. It does mean we'll break the REST API, which is going to break your Unreal stuff, but that's kind of how that works.
Yeah.
To clarify, we'll just break the REST API for this feature.
Yeah, it's just this feature. Yeah. Break the REST API for it. Actually, it'll probably break the gRPC one too. We'll need to regenerate all the stuff. So people will need to update their SDKs. Yeah, which is annoying. Actually, it's going to be fun to develop because it'll be a lot of changes across a lot of things. Anyway, we'll work it out. All right, so that's cool. Speaking of which, there was some good discussion happening around game server allocation based on player capacity. Had some really good feedback. Oh, looks like I got a thumbs up at the bottom from Eric. All right, cool. All right, it actually sounds like if anyone else has any thoughts or feelings on that, I would love to have it. I actually quite like where we ended up. Next week, this week and next, I'm stupid busy, and then I'm taking a week off. But once I get back, I'll update the design ticket on this. I think is yes. If you have time to review, Mark will update the design on this in a few weeks. They're a bit stupid, isn't it? In that, anyone have any if people don't know the ticket I'm referring to? Notes.
I'm just skimming now.
Yeah, Pune raised a really good point about how we could make it more flexible, and I sort of took that a little further. Primarily, I think the biggest feedback thing I want to sort of make sure that we've got a good idea on is like, say what happens if I'm like basically dealing with the race condition of player connections and constantly returning the same game server. So like if I'm saying, hey, I want a game server with room for 2 players, and it takes me 10 seconds for players to connect and do their thing, what's going to happen is I'm just going to be like, hey, give me a game server with 2 players, and it's just going to give me the same game server over and over again. And then like you're going to have to do a lot of work to like work you're probably going to have to do anyway, but the game server to like kick people back out to matchmaking because the game server itself is going to have to reject them because it doesn't get the right number of people. The idea I had in that is basically having a hold was what I called it, which is basically like, don't reallocate this game server for like this duration. So you can kind of, you probably can't remove those race conditions, but you can at least mitigate it a lot. I felt like, I don't know. Yeah. So I'd love to if people have feedback on that. I feel like trying to track what capacity should be post allocation or something like that gets really complicated, especially if we have a really flexible allocation state. So it seemed like a reasonable solution, but I would love to hear if people think it's a good or bad idea. It also means if you want to get the same one over and over again, you can.
It's not quite something to reserve. There's something where it reserves, right? Reserve a game server.
Sorry, John, I think you cut out just for a little bit.
Was there not another API where we do a reserve or?
Yeah, so actually that's an interesting point. We do have the reserve API. Reserve is usually driven by, hey puppy. Reserve is usually driven by, what's what I'm looking for? By the game server itself, because it sort of was for a different thing. It's an interesting question. Whether you'd like want to reserve based on player capacity, and then the game server would self-allocate once people connected. Is that sort of your thinking, Dom?
No, I was sorry. I was more looking at prior art to see what we had done before in here. But yeah, if that's on the game server side, then
you kind of end up in the same sort of place in some ways.
Yeah.
Although in this case, when you allocate, it's still allocated. Interesting. I think with reserve, it's actually all like from an implementation point of view, that's actually all controlled through that sidecar server. Tracks its own reservation state. Oh, it doesn't. I think it does. Yeah, it does actually. Each game server reserves itself. It's not the end of the world. Anyway, if you have thoughts or feels, please put them on the ticket. If not, if you're like, yeah, this makes sense, take it for a spin. Yeah, reservation was more around like self-registering matchmakers and being able to support them. Not that I like that idea the most. Okay. I'll move on then. The other, I just want to say help wanted. So trying to round out player tracking, auto scaling fleet based on player count. I think some of the naming on that design ticket probably should be aligned with just make a note. Some of this naming should probably it probably is worth a design review actually, just to make sure it looks like it. But yeah, it'd be good if somebody's interested in taking that on. It'd be kind of cool because we have the data in there now. That's it. Okay, that's my rambling done. I'm going to stop. Just want to build out more stuff around player tracking, get more people to use it. Sweet. I pass on the baton to Stephen.
Hey, so yeah, this was just a question that came up. I think it was actually discussed in the chat a bit, but we do have this edge case where 2 allocation requests might come in at the same time. This is because our matchmaker scales. So, but actually, even with just a single matchmaker with concurrent requests, we might get 2 allocation requests coming in. And I think the solution there suggested was to sort of push that back to the matchmaker. So the matchmaker handles the, like before making an allocation request, we kind of track that somewhere, and then, I don't know, check the status if another allocation request has been made.
So it sounds like your issue is like you might get 2 allocation requests for the same match. Is that accurate?
In our case, so yes, for the same fleet. So we might say let's say we've got a bunch of ready servers and we need to allocate one to get players in, but 2 individual players might try and allocate at the same time. This is because
you don't. Yeah, I push that back to the matchmaker for sure. Yeah, I can't see how unless you can think of something super clever, but I can't see how Agones is going to be aware of what your players are doing or your matchmaking state is in any way, shape, or form. We're just like, if you want a game server, ask us.
But it does know. I guess it's like allocating takes a certain amount of time. That's perhaps the.
Yeah, that sounds like not our problem. Like put a queue in front of it.
Yeah, I see.
You could put a queue in front of it, or some sort of deduping type thing. Yeah, it sounds outside of our core functionality, I think.
And is it? I'm wondering if it's possible to solve, because we don't know if. Let's see. We send an allocation request. Do we know when an allocation has finished, has completed?
Yeah, it should return.
Oh, okay. So it's
you get the IP back straight away.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop if 2 people come in wanting to connect to the same type of game server, for example. You could still get 2 separate calls coming into 2 separate boxes, matchmaking, which then, like Mark suggests, probably a queue in front of it. Yeah, you could definitely end up in the case where you allocate 2 of the same type of instances, if that's a problem for you.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Or again, depending on how you're matchmaking and how you're bringing in players, you might want something that's sort of like batches, like that. Like you send in requests, and every 10 seconds is like, okay, let's look at all the requests and give them a game server or something.
Yes, that might. Okay, yeah, cool.
I don't know if that works for your paradigm, or you chuck them all in a queue and then you pull the top 5 off the queue and give those to people or something.
I definitely have something similar that I need to work through, but at the minute, single matchmaker, just singleton, because don't have the scale.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. That's fun. Cool.
Yeah, this is a doozy. I think we had discussed this earlier, and I think the idea was we should just do a design ticket around it.
Yep.
We started at the idea of thinking about player tracking metrics. However, the more I look into player tracking, the more there's other stuff inside the dedicated game server which are useful. Things like frame rate, stuff like that, which would be really nice to get out.
Yep.
And notoriously great game servers like Unreal don't have any kind of Prometheus inside them or hookup to do that. If you're lucky enough to be using something else, that's great. But for us, it's really difficult to get metrics out. And like the ideal point for us would probably be Agones. Send it to the sidecar. So I think the initial design I would want to go for is have a kind of Prometheus endpoint on each sidecar. But I think that's more for the implementation and design. But yeah, it's something that I definitely want to start looking at.
I just remember. Okay, so there is. Here we go. There is. That's the metrics players. There we go. Pasting this terribly.
Okay, so this is specific around players.
Yeah.
And then like in my head,
my God.
players versus custom isn't too different.
And then what other metrics? I know we had some issues around metrics. Metrics players. There's frame rate over time. Actually, if I just copy paste that actually. And then I thought we had something about custom metrics somewhere.
Yeah, I thought you did, but I couldn't find it.
I vaguely. Here it is. Here it is. And that arbitrary metrics one is like hard and complicated, I feel. Like it's much easier to be like, okay, these are definite metrics that we can push out. Like here at predefined metrics. Doing so what I'm looking for, custom ones. Do we need to? The interesting thing I think with arbitrary, and I think we talk about it in there as well, is sort of how do we expose our own abstracted API to like open census, which will eventually become open telemetry probably as well, because I know that's still shifting. Do we make like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's just like
you think the wire format's more of the issue than actually the implementation?
I'm kind of like what does that API surface look like? Are we replicating work that other people are doing? Is it worth it? I don't know. It's worth exploring. Maybe let it drop off. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm like, if we rebuild the entire like say open census API, right? Which is like, do we replicate it entirely? Do we build our own that is opinionated on top? Do we look at what open telemetry is doing and say, okay, maybe we capture what they're doing even though they're not stable, and maybe like be like, okay, do you feel like your metric API is stable because that's our eventual goal, probably long term.
I don't know if they have an ingest endpoint at the minute. That's the only thing. I know they have exporters because I have looked deeply into it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, is there any easy way we could like just shove data in somehow without having to build our own API endpoints? I think it just requires some research.
Yeah. I think we should add that on a ticket kind of thing.
Yeah, if you want to check some notes into that ticket, that's
yeah,
I'm copy pasting that into the ticket.
I mean, yeah, they have something for Cortex which has a remote write API.
Interesting.
So maybe
yeah. That's got some interesting ideas there too. Yeah, because it feels like we're already exposing this stuff through the game server. Or actually, some of it's not going through the game server itself, but like if we're exposing this already, like maybe we can make that easier in some way. I don't know.
It is just like we need a REST endpoint that we can just hit and conform to whatever everyone else is doing rather than regenerate anything ourselves. Definitely no point building in if it's something already there.
I mean, from a user point of view, it would actually be kind of cool to be like, SDK.metrics dot count for this value or something, right? Like maybe it's somewhere in between. Like we do some basic stuff where we have some nice interfaces, but if you want to start doing complex stuff where like just shove data in here in the right JSON format or something.
So yes, I can imagine with, for instance, player tracking, there could be like you say, a metrics section where it says metrics players count, something like that. Not that you'd have to record that one, but you get what I mean. And then the arbitrary ones is you do yourself against the API.
Use something, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Just throwing ideas around. What's this you're sending through, Daniel?
Sorry, I was mute. Basically, Prometheus has two ways to ingest data into the Prometheus server. You can do this via pull or push. And there is this gateway where you can send metrics as a push strategy, and then the scraper will scrape this push endpoint. So basically, you don't have to expose everything by every single SDK or game server, but you could have a central hub where the metrics could be pushed and one single point of scraping, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The only thing there is that we are using OpenCensus, so we can push to Prometheus and Stackdriver.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the thing to look at. See if that. I think that's a remote write API. So I think see if OpenTelemetry have a concept of that in there.
Yeah. We may also be behind on like OpenCensus releases. So maybe it might be worth upgrading if there are certain things that it gives us.
And just one last thing, are we considering custom metrics? Let's say the developer wants to push some very specific metrics that is not expected or hard-coded, for example, heights or frame heights or everything, but it's more like a custom metric that only applies to their business. Are we considering that for the design?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I think that's what we mean by arbitrary. Yeah.
Right.
I think we'd agree with that. Yeah, Dom? Sorry.
Yeah. I have seen people destroy their game servers by putting too many metrics in them. So there be dragons.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, that's where I feel like, just looking at the notes, right? Like we have stuff in there where like, okay, yes, player metrics, we should probably do that. Things like game server frame rate over time. I think that's something like I think there's probably some we can all agree that are like, oh yeah, we should definitely do that. Then it comes down to how we want to do that. And then arbitrary becomes, yes, here be dragons, or like, what's a good way of doing this? Yeah. And we could, I mean, some of this could also be like iterative. Like we might just be like, okay, for right now, we're just going to support counts for arbitrary metrics. I don't know. And then we see what people want from there. We could even slowly grow it over time. It doesn't have to be one big thing, maybe. It could like, we can sort of pick our battles a bit. Start like an alpha metrics library and see what happens. That is the end of items that we have in our agenda. Is that it? Rudy, is this your first meeting? I can't remember if you've sung by before. I don't know if you just said anything, Rudy. You came off mute, but we didn't hear anything.
Yeah, I said I popped in a couple of these already.
Okay, I couldn't remember if you'd actually sung by before.
Yeah, I have. What I can say is limited right now.
Well, good to see you anyway.
Thank you. Same here. We have to talk. Well, let me say this, the metrics. The metrics, as long as you all are following OpenCensus, that seems to be like a sure win. Because it doesn't matter if you're doing, Prometheus or if you're doing New Relic or whatever, it's going to get there. Other than that, it's like a chore. And then there's a big question about why can't this be built in already? So, but yeah, it's definitely OpenCensus right like that.
Does OpenCensus actually push to New Relic?
New Relic is part of the board, so that whole they're making
that. They've got an exporter.
Yeah.
So, see? All right.
Yeah,
Things you learn.
yeah.
Oh, they do Datadog too. Yeah, see, this is why we chose this stuff. Like we made, there was good decisions made. Good, excellent.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I just wanted to mention that a really big fix just landed, which I like, and is for rolling update, which now should not scale down the fleet size to 0. So please use alpha version. I hope this should be stable soon, but definitely you should try. Yeah, trying to find the documentation on the website. Yeah.
It'll be under development right now because we're in RC.
Yeah. Sure. Nice. I will switch to this. Yeah, please use and try on some test server test cluster first before we use on production. But anyway, it works the same way as Kubernetes does. At least I replicate the most for waiting for REST game server set, which should be the same as replica set and deployments. So it should work.
Oh yes, this was a good one. I'm surprised actually it lasted for this long before we fixed this and somebody didn't call us out on it. Yeah, basically this means that game servers, like on your rolling update, it means that what's the word I'm looking for? It waits for game servers to be ready before moving to the next one, rather than just moving all the way through.
Yeah, and it was replicated with, for example, simple UDP game server. You can set this ready false, and it would not be ready until you connect and turn it on. And in this way, you can simulate this bug. I detailed in comments.
You take that for a spin. That'll be good.
Yeah, please.
Oh, I see Pune is back. Pune, did you want to talk about whether multi-cluster allocation should go to stable or not, or should we write a ticket for it, or we do not think it's ready yet?
Mm.
Pune, can you hear me? No.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
My microphone was having trouble. So I created a ticket, but I haven't changed it yet. There has not been any concern raised. So
Okay.
yes, I'm gonna.
I went looking for a ticket. I didn't find it.
I'm gonna find one for my team.
Oh, I see it. I see it. I see it. I see it. Okay, and that was done like 23 days ago. Okay, so in which case then that's pretty legit. In which case, yeah, that seems nobody's complained after that much time. I think that seems pretty reasonable.
Okay.
Yes, I think 23 days ago we said something along the lines of, if there was nothing after a week, we could do this work. No, we haven't done it yet.
I'll take care of it.
All right, sweet. That means we got some stuff that's moving through. That's awesome. Cool. That is the end of our agenda. I don't have any other thoughts. Unless anyone working on anything interesting or running into interesting problems they want to talk about. No. Thoughts, feelings? Anyone playing any good games they're really enjoying? Who was here? She would tell us to play Among Us, which I still have not played, and I feel bad about that.
Avengers is a pretty good game.
I did do that too, actually. Too many games.
Avengers
I'm still hooked on Brawl Stars at the minute. Brawl Stars is pretty good.
I've been playing a lot of Fallen Order. Finally getting stuck into that. I should play Avengers.
You should play Doom too, Mark.
Oh, the new one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my. I think I own it. I think I've spent that money. I just have to get to it. It's all right. I'm going on. I'm taking a week off so I can get through my. I can try and get through my gaming playlist.
Also, Baldur's Gate got delayed again today. If anyone
COVID.
plays RPGs,
Did anyone manage to snag a 380 card? No, no one.
The that Fall Guys looks quite interesting. I wonder how they do their networking and their physics calculations.
I can imagine it's YOLO.
I think there's a lot of cheating on the client, so perhaps it's not authoritative.
I chose to get trapped under one of the fans, and that's it. I'm gone.
I still haven't played Fall Guys either.
I think that's made with Unreal as well, isn't it? Dominic?
No idea. I can't tell from just looking at it. Most of the time, I do try and avoid Unreal. It's just for my sins I have to dig in there.
Let's see. Oh no, it is. Yeah, okay. So it's public. Good. Yeah, Fall Guys is Unity. There's a case study.
Yeah. I think they talked about adding some cheat protection, like the Unreal cheat protection. So maybe.
Oh, I think I had heard that. Don't they do something like they use the online services from somewhere else? Maybe.
I wonder which multiplayer library they're using for Unity. But interesting stuff. Okay. Well, unless anyone has anything else, I'll give everyone 16, 17, 18 minutes back. I can do math. Cool. Well, it's a
Very
pleasure
much.
seeing you all. The 1.9.0 stable release will come out next week. Maybe on Tuesday, maybe on Wednesday. We will see. I'll see you all in the Slacks.
Oh, thanks.